Hello and welcome to The Hero Spouse. I'm Kendra Ruth, here to answer one of your questions about marriage and midlife crisis. Today we have an anonymous female left behind and forward-moving spouse with a bomb drop of April 22nd, 2024, and a date of marriage of 2012. She has a boomerang who is a high-energy replayer. She says, he left 15 months ago, which looks like that was the bomb drop. She says he left without speaking, and he was in distress, saying he needed space, etc. I recently found out that he did jump into bed with a much younger woman. Previously, I had been defending him, saying he wouldn't have done that. I found out he bought a house, but he didn't move her in. But he rented out a room to one of the new younger crowd he was hanging out with. He was hanging out with people in their 20s, and we are in our mid-40s. I hadn't seen him for 6 months, but we still had been messaging during that time. But I saw him last weekend for about 5 hours, as I had asked to talk. Things have started to change, he said. He didn't know how long the new relationship would last. He seemed dissatisfied with it. He implied he didn't love her. The young guy has moved out. He said he felt very hollow and he got nothing from socializing, and he felt very alone. He had a small operation in February, and he seemed to have a trauma response to it. He has started cognitive behavioral therapy. That's good. What is going on here? I was very surprised by the change. Yet he's still adamant he made a logical and reasonable decision to leave. So when you ask what is going on here and that you're surprised by the change, is it the cognitive dissonance that you're surprised by, that he's changing in that he is not as much running, but having different feelings, feeling hollow, and yet still saying it was the right decision to leave, and yet having self-doubt? Because that's pretty normal. He is approaching liminality. He's approaching it kind of early, so when they start to approach liminality, they can approach it for a very long time and then run backwards. So expect this period to last a long time, where he feels like he might be approaching it, and he could approach it and definitely be in it. But he also could run back and approach and run back and run back. But he could just fall, because that's what he feels and seems like he's doing. But expect that this might not stick, and he could run right back into a replay. But he could fall and fall and fall, and this feeling of hollowness could stay. And he could just fall in that into a liminality, where he gets into it, what is a psychic death, which is a deep, he might feel a deep depression. And that'll be what's going on. But then why is he feeling that he made a reasonable and logical decision to leave? Well, think about it this way. He may have very well had a reasonable and logical decision to leave. Or maybe it's that the emotional decision to leave was logical, in that it was the right decision for how he was feeling because of what he was going through. But there was no way to verbalize it to you, because from your position and vantage, it's not logical, because you're not in there knowing what he was going to do and what he was being, and that he was going to go on this illogical journey of escape and avoid a midlife crisis. Because who's going to do that? And why are you choosing that? Because you're not really choosing it, but you're doing it, but you are choosing it, and that doesn't make any sense, because all of life is a choice. But we're like, it's a compulsion. And if it's a compulsion, is it a choice? Is it free will? There are all these, we're being pulled on this journey in this midlife crisis, right? It's this kind of addiction feel. And we have to go in and fill in these gaps in our development. And sure, we have free will and it's a choice. And yet we need to do this. So where are we in that? And so it's not about reason and logic, but there is a necessity to it. And so it does make sense that there needs to be some form of separation for a while. and it doesn't make sense to him in a way that we can verbalize. And we don't know how to make sense of it. But we sometimes know it just has to happen. And so he's going to be adamant. Yeah, I had to do it. So of course it's logical. It has to be logical because I had to do it. And he's got to be adamant because he knows he had to do it. And if he had to do it, it had to be logical. Because it wouldn't make sense otherwise, right? Even though that seems strange. So I can see what he's saying. And it does, there is some sense to it when you feel this, that you have to do something. And in the long run, MLCers are going to leave. And if they feel this need to leave, it's for the best. And I don't mean that divorce and ending things is for the best. What I mean is that when we're going through this, it's better that we go through it separate. And we hope that we come back and reconnect and come back together. It doesn't always work that way. It doesn't. That is the hope for us all. But there are some things that we're going to have that are going to happen to us. And MLC is going to happen to many. It is not an inevitability in every relationship, and everybody does not go through a midlife crisis. But for those who do, and for those who relationships that happen, it is often a good thing to be separate. And for that couple to have a separate period so that the person going through the crisis can have their growth. So that the person going through that has been left behind and forward moving can have the healing that has come from the betrayals that may have happened and the hurt and the need for their empowerment. So both people can grow and then they can grow back together. It is to come through this, but you need to go through and get those gaps in development on your own. And that's why it does make sense. But how do you make sense of that to the person who doesn't understand? You're sitting there with your spouse and you're like, you know what? I need to leave you now because I have gaps from childhood that I need to fill in. And I'm going to fill them in by leaving you and avoiding filling them in because it's going to be a crisis rather than a transition, and I'm just going to run away from them for a really long time. I mean, that doesn't make any sense, right? That's completely insane. So how do we explain it? I don't know that we do. Okay. So, but in general, it needs to happen. And so I get that he just can't explain. So he can sit there and go, and be adamant about it, but he can't put it into words because there might not be words from his position, but from a psychological position, we can do it. But from the position of the actual person doing it, how can he defend his actions? So I don't know if that even helps, but if it does, let me know because we can say why it needed to happen. It is better for the two of you to be apart. It is better for your healing. It's very hard when you have somebody who is a distant contactor and you don't have that kind of contact with them. You've had someone who you say is a boomerang, so you may have had some intermittent contact, and you can get some feedback with that, which can be a little bit easier than if you have a vanisher and you have nothing. But if you have a vanisher, you also get a lot of time for your detachment. Now, if you have a clean boomerang, you get a lot of feedback, but you also get so much so that you are pulled and sucked in and you have trouble with detachment. So boomerang might, for many people, it could be the best of both worlds if you're really can hook in on your detachment. Okay? So that's what you've got to be working on for you. So I hope that helps. And I will see everybody in the next